Good evening, this is Money Matters and my name is Anthony Wilson. Tonight I speak with the Chairman and the CEO of National Gas Company, Jerry Brooks and Mark Loquan. In the second segment, my co-host Judy speaks with a Fed promoter and the owner of a popular Fed venue. And in the final segment, Judy speaks with some partygoers on the cost of fetting. At the start of 2017, how is NGC doing financially?
NGC's performance, Anthony, has to be seen in the context of global energy prices. If you take a look at gas prices in 2014 were $4.40. In 2016, they got to their lowest level ever, less than $2, in fact, $1.86. Methanol prices are down 53%, and ammonia prices are down 46%. What we have used 2016 for as a year to recalibrate the NGC. We brought in a new CEO in the form of Mark Loquan, a very experienced CEO. We developed a new strategic plan to guide the company's operations for the period 2017 to 2020. We tried to solve the gas availability problem because there were two things that have impacted every energy company in 2016. One is gas production, and if you take a look at the graphs, you'd have seen that we moved from approximately 4.1, 4.2 BCF nationally to 3.1 BCF. And the knock-on impact on that has been to move from 20 billion in government revenues down to 6 billion in government revenues, a reduction of almost 70%. We have developed 4 pillars, and we have worked assiduously to progress those 4 pillars. The first of which is to secure gas supply. And I'm sure Mark will develop the points around truck, around Juniper, where our team played an important role, around across the border gas, key initiatives to get our gas supply up, and at the same time to re-engineer the business to take substantial costs out of the business. So really what we've been doing is positioning the business locally, regionally, and hemispherically to be able to have consistent growth and to take the volatility out. The specific question of finances, we are right now in the midst of our annual audit. Okay. And it will be inappropriate of us to talk about results with the audit not being completed. We have been able to complete our 2015, 2014 and all of the statutory requirements on time. We expect very shortly and by the end of February to be able to announce our results for 2016. Recall as well, through Phoenix Park, we have TTNGL, and therefore statutorily we have to be careful about what signal we give to the market because we are approaching the close period.
Do you have any doubts about NGC's role as a gas transporter?
Absolutely not. In fact, I am even more confident, and the board is even more confident about NGC's role as an aggregator, as a gas merchant, and as a transporter of gas. As a transporter of gas, we have over 1,000 kilometers of pipeline. We have an efficiency level of 99.96%, which means that there's gas security. We have the capital to expand our gas network to be able to accommodate new marginal fields and across the border gas as appropriate. In our role as gas merchant, we expanded that in terms of our commodity trading desk, in terms of some of the things that we're doing there to increase our income, to reduce the volatility, and to broaden the base of our income. And in our role as aggregator, what we're doing is that we're trying to provide more supply certainty to the downstream, even in the midst of the current difficulties, while working with upstreamers in partnership on key projects like across the border gas in Dragon, where we're working very closely with PDVSA, the Ministry of Energy, and with Shell to fast track that into 2019. We worked very closely on Juniper, and I thank our colleagues at National Energy who provided the heavy lift platform to ensure that those 590 million scf of gas can become available to the domestic and to the export market.
Is NGC at risk legally for failing to provide gas to companies on the estate?
I would be very careful about the term at risk. There are conversations right now taking place at the upstream level and at the downstream level. Those are important conversations, and we're working through those conversations. It is something that we're managing very carefully in the context of the current situation, but more importantly in the context of trying to resolve the prospective situation in terms of gas shortfalls which may arise and which we're hoping to alleviate.
So I would like to add a bit about the role of NGC. And if we step back a bit and look at NGC's role in catalyzing the industry growth in Trinidad and Tobago, NGC has played a very critical role in not only being a transporter but being an aggregator for the system. And particularly when you are in a shortfall case where you are managing all your molecules very carefully, the role of a domestic aggregator, a petrochemical plant aggregator, is a key one, and it is even more important now, I would say, than before, because it means that when you are on knife edges when it comes to how plants are operating, it is important when there are disturbances going on the upstream side that NGC is playing a key role in terms of managing that supply-demand balance, which is so delicate at the moment.
If President Donald Trump lowers taxes in the US, will that have an impact on NGC?
The focus of the country now has to be on keeping the downstream plants competitive. We therefore have to look at all the factors that could affect that, including the shale gas dynamics, as we know, which as we speak, we see that Donald Trump policy is also one of freeing up the energy potential in the US, which will also result in shale gas production and an increasing proportion of the production of the US natural gas supply will come from shale gas. There's no question about that. So in terms of how we manage those situations in Trinidad, it's really to understand the value chain that we have in Trinidad, which means going beyond the normal NGC relationships that we have and really also looking across the upstream, midstream and downstream chains and making sure that the value for Trinidad and Tobago is maximized while we take into account some of the, I guess, seismic shifts going on in the US and any factors that could impact those kinds of decisions.
The gas master plan also speaks to several of those issues as well, in the sense that one, I think we're going to have to take a look at our menu of fiscal incentives and how do we tweak and modify those fiscal incentives in the context of other jurisdictions, for example, the UK, which has modified its own fiscal incentives, India and Norway, which have modified fiscal incentives as they relate to smaller marginal pools. So that's one area that has to be addressed. The second area that has to be addressed is our jurisdictional competitiveness to the extent of how we work operationally. So how do we partner in terms of rig sharing, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of seismic, to ensure that as we approach fields and as we approach work operationally, we are able to take costs out of our business. At NGC, we are aggressively doing that. We, for example, have taken 23% of our costs out of our business in 2016. And that is through procurement, through business process, and through ways that we work. In insurance alone, we save 25% in terms of our insurance program. So those are things that our jurisdiction is going to have to do. We are also going to have to focus on productivity, Anthony. We're going to have to focus on productivity, which is getting our output up per employee, per MMBTU of gas, or per barrel of oil. And again, new modalities and re-engineering of our work ruthlessly has to be done. If you take a look at the US in terms of shale gas, they have done it. If you take a look at the Canadian model, they have done it. And therefore, in this new seismic environment, we have to be very agile, very focused, very disciplined, and very competitive.
Great, thank you very much. When we come back, Judy looks at the financing behind the Fed. Money Matters will be right back.